Hey guys, what's up there? It's Kid Bombing here, and welcome back to my channel, and thank you ever so much for inviting me again to do this brand new video of Read Aloud. Guys, I really appreciate you guys for amazing support, which has mean a lot to me, and thank you ever so much. Just subscribe to my channel, can keep my channel growing. That's so much honoured and appreciate it also. So I have done reading 7 Disney classic stories. I have done Aladdin, Cinderella, Peter Pan, The Jungle Book, The Lion King, Lady the Tramp, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2. So what we'll be doing is I'm going to read the Lilo and Stitch. If some of you are quite familiar with Lilo and Stitch, you know it is Stitch was illegal experiment. It's known as Experiment 626. You can see Lilo. She lives in a island called Hawaii. So if some of you are quite familiar with Lilo and Stitch, this year it's going to be 20 years old since Lilo and Stitch was premiered. You can see Lilo and Stitch logo. It says Disney Lilo and Stitch. You can see in the corner of the book cover it says Disney's Wonderful World of Reading. Okay, so are you ready to listen to me when I read to you? Yep. Okay. Shall we begin? In a far off galaxy, an alien scientist named Jumba had created a strange creature called Experiment 626 because 626 was always destroying things. He was being sent to prison for Grand Council woman, but 626 managed to escape. Now 626 was headed for Earth. The Grand Council woman sent Jumba and Pleakley, another alien, on a mission to capture 626 and bring him back. Meanwhile, on Earth, a 5-year-old Hawaiian girl named Lilo was also on a mission. She was feeding a peanut butter sandwich to the fish named Pudge. Lilo thought it was very important to do this because she believed Pudge controlled the weather. Unfortunately, Lilo was now late for her hula dance lesson. Lilo rushed into her dance class, dripping water on the floor. Her classmates began to slip and slide. "Stop, stop," cried the hula instructor. He asked Lilo why she was late and wet. The little girl tried to explain about Pudge. You're crazy," said Myrtle. With one of Lilo's classmates, she pounced on Myrtle. The instructor quickly pulled them apart. The instructor called Lilo's sister, Nani, to take Lilo home. Nani was Lilo's only family, but when Nani arrived, Lilo already left. Nani picnicked because a social worker was arriving this afternoon to decide whether Lilo could continue to live with Nani. But Lilo was already at home, listening to Elvis Presley music. She was sad because none of her classmates wanted to be her friend. Lilo was so upset. She locked her sister out of her house. Nani was still trying to get in when a social worker, Kyber Bubbles, arrived. Once inside, the visit went from bad to worse. Kyber told Nani that she had 3 days to prove that she could take care of Lilo properly. Otherwise, Lilo would be taken away. Later that evening, Niney and Lilo were talking in Lilo's room. Suddenly, something lit up the sky outside. A falling star! Lilo shouted excitedly. She pushed Niney out of her room. Lilo wanted to make a wish in private, but Niney still listened as Lilo whispered, "It's me again. I need someone to be my friend. Maybe send me an angel, the nicest angel I have." But what Lilo had really seen was 626's spaceship crash into Earth. 626 stepped out of a smoking crater. He cackled with daylight. He headed down a dark road, only to be run over by some trucks and knocked out. When he woke up the next morning, none the worse for wear. The indestructible 66 found he was in an animal rescue home. Before long, he realized that Jumbo Pleakley were after him. That same morning, Niney and Lilo went to the animal shelter rescue home to find a pet. Niney hoped it will cheer Lilo up. When Lilo came in, 66 tried to look as much like a dog as he could. Lilo was his only way to escape from Jumbo and Pleakley, so he hugged Lilo and won her heart. "What is this? What is that thing?" Niney cried when she saw 626. "A dog, I think," the rescue lady answered nervously. Despite Niney's protests, Lilo adopted her new dog and named him Stitch. Meanwhile, Jumbo and Pleakley were watching as Niney and Lilo left with Stitch. Jumbo wanted to capture 626 right away, but Pleakley reminded his partner that he could not be seen. "We have to blend in," Pleakley told him. After Niney left work, Lilo tried to teach Stitch how to fetch, but Stitch was not interested in being trained. Lilo ended up fetching for Stitch instead. Then Lilo bought 2 snow cones. Stitch ended up dumping his on the head of a small dog. Stitch was not exactly what Lilo had expected. Dressed like tourists, Jumbo and Pleakley were nearby watching Stitch. They were waiting for their chance to capture him. Later that day, Lilo and Stitch sat in the restaurant where Niney worked. Lilo finished drawing in her sketchbook and held it up to Stitch. "This is you," she told him. "This is your badness level. It's unusually high for someone your size. We need to fix that." Jumbo and Pleakley were also sitting in the restaurant. They lured Stitch over to their table, while Jumbo grabbed Stitch and tried to place his alien handcuffs on the creature. Stitch opened his mouth wide and swallowed Pleakley's head. Niney had to dump a pitcher of iced tea on Stitch to make him let go. When the restaurant owner found out that Stitch belonged to Niney, he pointed to the door. "This is not working out," he told Niney. Niney and Lilo took Stitch home. "This is a great home. You will like it here. You like it a lot," Lilo to Stitch. She gave him a pillow so she could sleep on the floor. Stitch shredded the pillow. Then he went to the kitchen where he made another mess. Nani had had enough. She grabbed Stitch, saying, "We have to take him back." "He was an orphan. We adopted him," said Lilo. "What about Ohana?" Nani stopped. Their father had told them about Ohana. Ohana means family. Lilo continued. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. I know, Nani said, sighing. Stitch jumped from Nani's arms, and he and Lilo went to Lilo's room. Stitch climbed into Lilo's bed and found a photo of her family under the pillow. "Be careful of that," Lilo warned. The picture was all she had left of her father and mother. She snapped it back and slipped a precious photo back under the pillow. So Stitch amused himself with other things in Lilo's room. He built a model city and they destroy it. I'm lost. In the middle of the night, Stitch woke Lilo and showed her a picture of a book he found. "That's an ugly duckling," Lilo yawned. "See? He's sad because he's all alone and nobody wants him." Lilo pointed to another page. On this page, family hears him crying and they found him. He is happy because he knows where he belongs. Stitch took the book and crawled into the bed Lilo had made for him. The next morning, Cobra Bobbles paid them a visit. "Heard you lost your job," he said to Nani. But before Nani could explain, Stitch wrecked Cobra with a book. As he left, Cobra told Nani that she had to get a new job if she expected to keep Lilo. To Lilo, he said, "Next time I'll see this dog, I expect to be a model citizen." So Nani set out to find a new job with Lilo and Stitch in tow. First, she went to the local grocery store. While Nani spoke to the owner, Lilo tried to teach Stitch to behave. Elvis Presley was a model citizen, Lilo explained. "I've compiled a list of his traits for you to practice. Number 1 is dancing. Unfortunately, the dance routine knocked over the owner, so Nani didn't get the job." While Nani trying to get a job at a coffee shop, Lilo continued with Stitch lessons. Number 2, Elvis played guitar, she said as she handed Stitch a ukulele. But when Stitch played the instrument, the piercing high note shattered glass. Nani didn't get the job either. Finally, as Nani tried to get the job as a lifeguard, Lilo prepared Stitch for his last lesson. "Time to bring it all together," she told him. Stitch began to play his ukulele. Toys began to crowd around him to take pictures, but the camera flashes upset Stitch, who caused a commotion. Nani, once again, did not get the job. Everything had gone wrong. The unhappy sisters sat down on the beach. David, a friend of Nani's, saw them. To cheer them up, David suggested they all go surfing. The group headed for the waves. Once she began to surf, Nani forgot all her troubles. Stitch clamped his claws, and David and Lilo laughed as they enjoyed the waves. For a little while, everyone was happy. But as Nani and Lilo and Stitch rode the large wave, Jumper sneaks up behind them. Jumper grabbed Stitch and pulled him under the water. Desperate, Stitch grabbed Lilo and began dragging her down. David and Nani pulled Stitch to the safety, never noticing the aliens. Stitch finally won his struggle with Clay and Jumper, but he was exhausted. Luckily, David went back and rescued Stitch. Back on the beach, Nani frantically checked to make sure he was okay. Nani looked up to see Cobra Bobbles watching. He had seen the whole thing. Nani asked David to watch Stitch. Then Cobra quickly told Nani that although he knew who she was trying, it was time to find a more suitable phone for Lilo. That night, Lilo studied her family photo. Our family's little now, but if you want, you could be a part of it, she said to Stitch. Stitch wanted to belong, but he knew he had already caused too much trouble. While Stitch watched, Stitch took the ugly duckling book and climbed out of the window into the night. Stitch walked into the forest. He opened the storybook to the pages that Lilo had showed him, just like the ugly duckling. Stitch felt alone and said, I'm lost, he cried. The next morning, a very unhappy Grand Councilwoman fired Prickly and Jumper, but Jumper was pleased. Now he could catch Stitch his way. Soon Jumper found Stitch in the forest. Stitch didn't run, but he wouldn't go with Jumper either. Waiting, Stitch told Jumper. For what? Jumper asked impatiently. Family, replied Stitch. You're built to destroy. You can never belong, Jumper said. Stitch dropped the book and ran. Meanwhile, Lilo joined Nani in the kitchen for breakfast. Stitch left. Lilo murmured sadly. Nani comforted Lilo. Now it would be harder to tell Lilo that they would be living apart. But suddenly, David burst in saying, I think I have found you a job. This was Nani's last chance to keep Lilo. She rushed out with David, telling Lilo to stay inside and not to let anyone in. At the same time, Stitch was racing to Lilo's home, with Jumper following close behind. Stitch slipped through the doghouse. Jumper crashed through the front door. Frightened Lilo called Cobra Bubbles. Ain't attacking my house. They want my dog. Jumper and Stitch fought so hard that they destroyed the house. Meanwhile, Nani got the job at a general store down the street. As she left, a fire engine shrieked past, fearing the worst. Nani raced home. Cobra Bubbles was already there. Lilo was in his car. Nani begged Lilo not to take Lilo from her. Kuiper just pointed to the ruined house and shook his head. Lilo watched as the two argued. Then she slipped out of the car into the forest. Stitch followed her. Stitch quickly found Lilo, wanted to apologize. He handed Lilo her scotched family photo, which he had managed to save. But Lilo was angry with Stitch. "You ruined everything," she shouted. Lost for words, Stitch transformed himself into his alien form. Lilo finally understood. "You were one of them." At that moment, an alien named Captain Gantu appeared. He had been sent by Councilwoman to capture Stitch. He snared both Stitch and Lilo and carried them to his spaceship. Stitch escaped, but before he could free Lilo, Gantu's ships took off. But by the time Nani arrived, she was too late. She watched as a spaceship carrying her sister disappeared into the sky. Luckily, Stitch convinced Jumper and Prickly to help him rescue Lilo. Soon, Nani and the three aliens were in Jumper's spaceship battling Captain Gantu. After the wild chase, Stitch was able to free Lilo. Jumper landed his spaceship on the waves behind David, who was surfing. David gave him all of the ride to the shore on his surfboard, though it took a few trips. But their troubles were not cut either. Cobra Bobbles was waiting on the beach for Lilo, and aliens troops were waiting for Stitch. The Grand Councilwoman ordered the troops to place Stitch on a ship. Stitch asked if he could say goodbye to Lilo. The Councilwoman was shocked. "This is my family," Stitch explained. "I found it all on my own. It's a little broken, but it's still good." Then Lilo showed Stitch's adoption papers on the council, and the Grand Councilwoman, a stickler for the rules, she agrees to let Stitch stay on the Earth with Lilo, and Cobra decided Lilo could stay with Nani. Jumper and Pleakley stayed on Earth too, along with David and Cobra Bobbles. They became part of Lilo's new family. Nowhere ever gets left behind. Well, guys, I guess you really enjoyed reading in Stitch with me, and I hope you guys are really impressed about reading Lilo and Stitch, because I love Lilo and Stitch movies. That was my favourite. I think I remember back in childhood, I went to cinema. It was in Whiteview cinemas, and I'm glad you enjoyed watching this video. So if you haven't already, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to hit the bell for notification just below this video. And also, thank you ever so much, and hope you have a great day.